In this video, you're going to learn how you can memorize your worship song lyrics so that you can lead with confidence, you can see the people that you're leading, all these benefits and more coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com, your daily dose of practical worship leading tips. If you want to find those tips, head over to Instagram or Facebook at Leading Worship Well, where I'm posting new worship leading tips every single day. But you're here on YouTube, so go ahead, hit subscribe down below, and let's get into it, because today we're talking about how to memorize your worship music. We're not really talking about why you should do that. I'm assuming if you found this video, if you clicked on it, then you already recognize the benefits of, number one, it allows you to see the people that you're leading instead of just staring down at your music stand the whole time like this and never looking up. You can actually see the people that you're leading in worship, which is a very important worship leading skill. I talk about that in this video right here. Opening your eyes. Opening your eyes doesn't just mean opening your eyes so that you can read music on a music stand, but it means opening your eyes to see the people that you're leading. So that's one benefit. It allows you to lead with confidence as well, because you actually know what you're leading. Like, you've had to put in the work, because you aren't just going to be able to show up on Sunday and read it off of a page, but now it's actually inside of you. So it helps with your speaking transitions. You're able to make deeper connections because you actually understand the lyrics, all of these sorts of things. I assume you know the benefits. Before we get into how to actually memorize your lyrics, I want to hear from you though. Do you and your worship team memorize your music right now? Are you a team that has music stands and you stare at them all the time, and that's okay for you and your team? And by the way, like, I understand that's where some people are at. Maybe you're volunteers and you don't have a bunch of time to put into memorizing your music. If that's where you're at, thank you for clicking on this video, because I sense that you want to take your worship leading to the next step. But if that's you, just let me know in the comments below. Or maybe you and your team have your music completely memorized, or maybe you have a confidence monitor. Whatever it is, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll talk to you in a second. Thanks so much for leaving your answer down below, and let's get into it. How do you actually memorize your worship music? Here are 5 steps to do it. Here we are on step number 1. And step number 1 that you need to do is you need to break the lyrics down into sections. And I'm going to use this as an example. This is a song, Another in the Fire by Hillsong, and I chose it because there are a lot of lyrics. By the way, I'm down here in the corner. I'm really small because that's all I could have screen real estate wise, and still have all the lyrics on the screen, because there are a lot of lyrics. So if we just look at all of these lyrics, you'd probably think to yourself, how in the world am I supposed to memorize all of these lyrics? There's way too many. Well, the first step is to break it down into sections. So let's do that. I'll try to do it quickly here. We can do it together. And so let's just break it down into sections. So section number 1, here's verse number 1. And if you're looking at the lyrics, this is probably already done for you. But if it's not, then you should do it, because this is going to help us in the next step. There's chorus 1, here's verse 2, and this is just helping us identify the different sections that we actually need to memorize. Here's chorus 2. Excuse my drawing, by the way, I'm using a mouse, so it's kind of difficult. Here's the bridge, put a B for bridge. Here's verse number 3. Chorus 3. Here's the bridge. And chorus 3. So look at that again. Remember what we had? We just had a big chunk of lyrics that we had to memorize. Now we can see there's, 9 different sections, so we can break it down a little bit further, which is essential whenever you're memorizing. We no longer have to memorize this whole list of lyrics, but now we have different sections that we can focus on. The next part of this process is looking for the repeats in the section, and we can actually get rid of 2 sections here. For example, we see the bridge, we do it the first time, but then over here we can cross this out because we've already memorized it over here. And then we've got chorus number 3, we can get rid of that because we already sang that. And so now we're down to 7 sections, right? So we've already got rid of 2 sections that we don't need to memorize. So we've broken it into sections, and now let's move on to the next step. That was the first step. We've kind of broken it down into bite-sized chunks. So let's move on to step number 2. Here we are in step number 2, and so far we've broken it down into sections, and we can start to look at, okay, well, I need to memorize verse 1. That's one section, so I can focus on that, make sure I've got that down, and then we could move on to chorus number 1. Maybe this is still intimidating for you, though. So once you start to memorize these, we actually have to understand the lyrics. If you're just trying to memorize word for word, it's going to be very difficult to do that because you don't see it in the context of the entire song. But if you understand the lyrics in the context of the entire song, then that's going to help you understand them more, which is going to help you memorize them more. So let me show you what I mean. Here's an example. So in this song, we can see that there are 3 different verses, verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, and each of those verses, if you look at them, they focus on different time periods. So that's how this song is set up. You'll see this in a lot of different songs. You can kind of memorize or understand the main point of each verse. Like each verse usually has a main point that they're trying to get across, and then the chorus is like the actual point of the whole song. So if you think of like a paragraph or an essay, you've got paragraphs that support the main point, and that's like the verses are supporting the main point. The main point is the chorus. So that's what I mean by understanding it. Here in this song, there's sort of different time periods. So I view verse number 1 as the past. All right, why do we see it like that? Because we say, when I look at the space between where I used to be. All right, this is going to come in into play later. So where I used to be, and then we can look at that and say, okay, well, here's chorus number 1. There was another in the fire, and I've been set free. So do you see the past tense of all of this? Let's move on to verse number 2, because now we're getting to the present, right? Should I fall in the space between what remains of me? So this is like where I am right now, what remains of me. And then if we're talking about the present, then we would use the word is. Now there is another in the fire, there is another in the waters. Should I ever need reminded what power sets me free, there is a grave that holds no body, and now, right now, in the present, that power lives in me. So now we're in the present. Let's move on to verse number 3. Verse number 3 talks about the future. So he who was and still is, we've already talked about those things, and then will be through it all. And that's the future that we're talking about. So come what may, in the space between all the things unseen, that is the future. So what happens in the future, I know I will never be alone. Now we're talking about the future. There will be another in the fire. There will be another in the waters. Should I ever need reminded? You get the picture, all right? So now we understand that this song is talking about the past, the present, and the future, and that's going to help us understand the lyrics, because the hard part about this song, and this you'll see this sometimes in worship songs, and it makes it harder to understand, is, okay, we've got chorus number 1 right here, and it's pretty similar to chorus number 2, minus a few words. But if we understand what it's talking about, that verse or chorus number 1 is talking about the past, chorus number 2 is talking about the present, chorus number 3 is talking about the future, then we actually understand what words we need to use, and we can think whenever we're singing the song, okay, chorus number 1, that's the past. Chorus number 2, that's the present. Chorus number 3, that's the future. So that's just an example of understanding the lyrics. Also, read through them and understand what the lyrics are actually saying. Not only is it going to help you memorize it better, but it's going to help you with your speaking transitions, because you're actually going to know what the song is saying, and you'll be like, well, this song is saying this, therefore my church needs to know this. So that's a benefit of memorizing your lyrics. So make sure that you understand the lyrics, and let's move on to the 3rd step of how you can actually memorize your lyrics. Step number 3, so far we've broken the song down into chunks. That's going to help us understand what we specifically need to memorize. We don't need to memorize things twice if they're singing the bridge over and over again. We just need to memorize it once and then know that we sing it over again. And then we've understood the lyrics, so we actually know what we're singing about now. We've drawn connections between different parts, but we haven't actually memorized anything yet. So step number 3 is where you actually start to memorize things. So you want to break it down into those chunks, and you just take it one section at a time, and you look at verse 1 and you start to go through it in your head, and you read the words and you sing it over and over again. And then you do it over and over again and over again until you have verse 1 done. Listen, there's no shortcut to memorizing. Sometimes it just takes repetition. You do it over and over and over again. But what happens is most people just start right there. They see the whole song and they just go through the entire song and try to sing it over and over and over and over and over again. And they're like, this is impossible. I can't do this because I have to memorize the whole song. That's why we've broken it down into chunks. So I want you to take it one chunk at a time and make sure you've got verse 1 down and then the chorus down, and you do those over and over again. And then you move on to verse 2 and you do verse 1, chorus 1, verse 2 over and over again, and you'll start to get it. Like I said, there's no shortcut. You've got to do it repetitively. It is a repetitive process. I'm going to share some encouragement at the end because whenever you first do this, it takes forever. But as you do it more and more, you'll start to see that it gets a little bit easier. So just start running through it over and over again. And let's move on to step number 4, which is going to help you in tandem with step number 3. Step number 4 is to take it a step further. So far, we've just kind of done everything in our head. Maybe you wrote down and broke it down into different sections on paper. But now I want you to take it and I want you to actually write the song out. So you can see I did that here. I actually led Another in the Fire a couple weeks ago during church, and I had never led it before. And I'm like, man, there are a lot of lyrics here. How am I going to memorize this? And I wrote the lyrics down, because whenever you write it down, it gets it out of your head and it gets it onto something that you can see. And also there's something about writing that just improves your memory, because as you're writing, you're going a little bit slower than singing, so it gives you more time to sort of recall these lyrics that you're trying to remember. And you can take your time. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to write it down. You might have to do it 3 or 4 times. I know it seems like work, but I'm telling you that this works whenever you write it down. So sit down, pen and paper, not typing it up, but actually sit down and write the lyrics out. And then whenever you go to create the slides, if this is a new song, actually type them up. Don't just copy and paste them from somewhere. But if you need to memorize the lyrics, sit down and then type them. That's another thing that you can do. So write them down, type them up for your slides, and then you have your slides for Sunday, but you've also gone through the process. And all of those things makes your brain work to draw these connections where it's like, okay, well, that line says this and that moves into this, and it's all part of the process. So yes, repeat the song over and over again, but take time to write it down, take time to type up the slides, type up a chord sheet, whatever you need to do. All of these things reinforce the memorization of the lyrics of the song. Let's move on to the last step. Finally, tip number 5, step number 5, and this is more of an encouragement for you, and I kind of already said it earlier in the video, but I just want to encourage you that the more you do this, the easier it will get. With anything in life, like memorization is a skill. So think about the first time that you just played an instrument or sang. Like, it was difficult, right? Because you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't have your systems of how you learn songs down. You didn't have your, how to transition between chords, all of that stuff. But now, hopefully, it's easier, right? And the same thing happens with memorization, because memorization is a skill. So start this process of learning how to memorize and understand that it's a skill, and it's going to be really difficult the first time you do it. The first 10 times you do it, it's going to be difficult, but the more you do it, the easier it will get. So if you are serious about memorizing your worship lyrics and you're like, this is too difficult, I can't do this, yeah, it is difficult, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I'm just speaking from experience. I've been memorizing my music for maybe 10 years now, and I can do it pretty quickly. Not because I'm super smart or because I'm super good at it, but just because I've been doing it for 10 years and I've got these processes figured out, just like I broke down in this video. And now I can memorize all of these lyrics. I think I memorized them in 3 days or something. And that's a big song. So you can do this. I'm not special. I'm not super good at memorizing music. I've just put in the time. You can put in the time. The more you do it, the easier it will get. So will you take the challenge to memorize one song for this Sunday? If you sit down right now, stop watching YouTube, and just figure out, okay, here is if you've never done this before, what would be the easiest song in my set for me to memorize the lyrics of? And I want you to go through that process, break it down into sections, understand the lyrics, actually understand what you're singing instead of just reading it off a page. I want you to write down the lyrics, and then I want you to play through the song over and over and over and over again. And understand that if you've never done this before, it's going to be difficult, but the more you do it, the easier it will get. Will you take that challenge? One song. That's all I'm asking, one song. And then I want you to gauge after you lead with the song memorized, okay, how did that affect my leading? And maybe don't base it off just this one time, because this one time you're going to be nervous because you're like, I've never led without music in front of me before. But the more you do it, I'm telling you, there is so much benefit. I covered that at the beginning of the video. There's so much benefit to memorizing your lyrics. So I hope that gives you a clear picture on how you can memorize your music. Before you go, I want to give you something that will help you even more if you're trying to improve your worship leading. Yes, memorizing your music is one of the ways that you can do that, but I also put together a free audio training called 5 Tips to Instantly Improve Your Worship Leading. One of those tips is to open your eyes, which you can only do if you memorize your music. So if you want access to that, it's a free audio training. There's a link in the description below. These are just 5 simple tips, but you got to know them and apply them to your worship leading to actually improve. So link in the description below. Sign up for that. I'll send it to you. Thanks so much for joining me today. Once again, my name's Spencer Cormany from leadingworshipwell.com. And until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.